Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about the do's and don'ts of provider communication for medical coders. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. All right, I will start off by saying this. Disclaimer first, different facilities have different rules. Some employ an in-house provider educator or a CDI, clinical documentation improvement practitioner. And so those folks are usually the ones that are educating the providers, and the coders just code. So if this is the case at your facility, obviously you want to follow the rules and do what is most appropriate there. However, there are a lot of places that it is on the coder to do the educating with the providers. So today's message is for those folks. Now, even if you don't do the education, you could still listen to today's message because of the simple fact that you always want to learn and you want to be prepared so that if the time ever does happen to appear that you do have to communicate with providers, you're going to be ready. And the thing about being a medical coder is it's not just somebody who can medical code. It is literally many hats all in one. You have to be able to educate, you have to be able to direct, you have to be able to take direction, you have to be able to really convey a lot of these things that are always changing all the time, and you have to be willing to adapt to this, and you have to know all the coding rules on top of it. So because of all of this, it takes a lot and it's a growing process. But if you limit yourself to just, oh no, I don't communicate with providers, I'm just going to do the coding and that's it, whatever they have there is whatever I'm going to code for. Here's the thing, when you limit yourself like that, you don't allow yourself to grow. And there are going to be things that you're going to be uncomfortable with at first because maybe you're a shy person and maybe talking to anyone is difficult for you. This is a team sport. Medical coding, as much as it is an individual task, it is a team sport. You still have to work with a provider. You still have to work with the nurses. And again, it just depends on where you are. But in most cases, it is going to be on the coder to do this. So you have to prepare yourself. So the do's, the do's I'm going to start out with. Do prepare yourself as far as whatever specialty you are in. Before you go and start speaking to anybody, educate yourself. Learn about that particular specialty. Learn about whatever clinic that you're in. If it's family practice, go on the internet and look up family practice websites. There's a lot of them that talk about like the different things that make their clinic unique and the things that you do have to know. In family practice, you have to know a little bit of everything, plus preventative care. So you have to make sure that you are understanding everything in this process. If you are in cardio, same thing. You can look at the American Heart Association for more information about that. Study and learn about the whole process before you start going to providers and start asking questions that could have easily been answered by looking up the answer. Now, there's going to be times when things get a little bit hairy and it's not going to make sense. I have run into that many times in my research in ortho, where I am trying to figure something out and I can't because it's explained on paper, but it still doesn't make sense to me. And at that point, after I've exhausted everything, I will go to one of my boys and ask them, can you explain how does this work? Because I learned this, this, and this. And they'll say, okay. And I said, I understand it like this. Okay. And then I said, but, and then they go, here's where it's different, or this is where it's because of this. So they will see that I've already done my research. I have heard from providers who say, oh, those coders don't know anything. And when they ask me questions, it's like they didn't even try to research anything. And it's heartbreaking because what you do as a medical coder is a reflection on all medical coders, because a lot of times providers will think that how you act is how all coders will act. Because trust me, I've had to run some damage control. And a lot of times I get providers who have been mistreated by coders. And yeah, sometimes the providers have mistreated the coders as well. But a lot of times, two wrongs don't make a right. And because, maybe you might get your feelings hurt by something they say, it doesn't mean that you can take it out on their coding. And so there's a lot of times when you're going to run into that. All right, I'm going to go into that a little bit in a minute, but more on the do's. So do your research first before you ask. If you are going to communicate by email, now the query process is different for every place. Some places will have you use a standardized query form, and others will have you, the coder, to formulate the query on your own, which gets a little sticky, especially because you have to word it in a way that is not leading, okay? And that is the most appropriate way, is that you do not lead, all right? Here's the thing. When you are doing any kind of communication, whether it is not even if it's just for queries, it's just for anything. Sometimes it's for just education or whatever, or FYI, you know, for your information email. Make sure you are writing in proper English. Pet peeve number gajillion for a provider, and I've heard them complain. I don't understand how anybody can send this kind of email that doesn't even have proper English, like is not even punctuated correctly, nothing, like no care in it at all. And really, it does make some providers upset when they see this, because why should they have to listen to somebody who didn't even take the time to use like a word process software or something to make sure that it sounds correct? Anytime you send an email to anybody, okay, you want to make sure that that thing is written perfectly. You need to make sure that it is nice and it sounds good and it's good sentence structure, no run-on sentences, no starting sentences with but, no starting sentences with and. We all know this. And when you are addressing them, address them properly, doctor or Mr. or sir or ma'am. You need to make sure that all those things are proper. I've seen people put doctor with a lowercase d, r, and then their name. Come on, guys. We've known this since grade school. You make it a capital D, lowercase r, and then a period, and then their name. So that's how you address them. You address them formally. You don't get familiar with them. Hey, Jeff, or hey, whatever their name is. You don't do that unless you've already have an established relationship and it's already been okayed that you can talk like that with each other. That's only in those kinds of situations. But in any kind of beginning of a relationship with a provider, you have to be very formal with them. For the longest time, I am on a first name basis with some of my providers now, because we have worked together for so many years that they kept telling me, Blue, call me by my first name. Just call me by my first name. Because I would always say Mr. or Sir or Mr. or Sir or Dr. so-and-so. And they go, just call me by my first name. So I was like, okay. I don't do it in front of people. I do it like when we're by ourselves, but that's what I do. Because it's a sign of respect when you do those kinds of things. Yes, they're people too. But at the same time, they've worked hard to get to their position. They deserve that respect. And they respect me in return. So that's the thing, that when you're building those relationships, it's the details. It's those little things. Because if you start saying, oh, call him by their first name, no. Or Mr. instead of Doctor, oh no. Or Miss instead of Doctor, oh no. No. Anytime I've heard anybody say, oh, Mr. So-and-so, and it's actually a doctor, whoa, hold on. And I will correct people even when that doctor is not there. Because that's another thing too. When you are... how you are with them to their face is how you need to be behind their back. You have to be consistent, because if you are smiling to their face and then behind their back you're just trash talking, it's one thing if you've gotten into a disagreement and you are maybe confiding in somebody, one person, preferably somebody that doesn't work with you outside of the hospital, you're talking about them, then that's fine, because that's you just venting. But how you are to that provider to their face is how you need to be about that provider to other coders or other staff around, because having a consistent attitude is really key. You don't ever want to be known as somebody who is two-faced or who will smile to your face one day and then behind your back they'll be talking about you, because everybody at work talks. Everybody at work talks. It doesn't matter how tight-lipped they are. that will be the very rare person that will not ever say anything about you or your business. So that's why I always tell you guys to try to keep your emotions in check. You really do have to work on that. And that is a continual process even for me to do, because I am a sensitive person. And when I get upset about something, you know, it's very difficult, especially if I feel that I'm being dismissed. And it's not with my providers now, thank goodness. It's usually with the other staff that I feel that way. And so that's something that I have to work on. But thankfully for me, when I think about my providers, they are the most important to me. And if there's ever a problem with one of them, I feel it, you know, because this is a team sport. And when I need them to get on board, I really need them to get on board. So it usually takes just some time and just maybe a little bit of cooling off, because a lot of times it's not personal. And like 99% of the time, it's never personal. It's just something that provider is going through, which is another thing that you have to think about is providers are humans and they have feelings too. And they don't like it when they get scolded. They don't like it when somebody comes up to them and immediately starts telling them, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, or you need to change this. No. A coder should never say you need to do something. A lot of times providers are so busy taking care of other people. That's what they do. And they are very alpha. And a lot of times, who is there to take care of them? Because they're so busy being in charge that they don't need to be bossed around at the end of the day. They don't need somebody to, oh, I'm going to force you to do this or whatever. Or if you don't do this, and then talk about money. You know what I'm saying? Like about the revenue and the RVUs and things like that. If you don't do this, that's never a good way to be. The whole thing about it is why, and that is another do. You have to explain why. A lot of times if you are saying, okay, this is a new thing with coding, the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth is why? Why do we have to do anything different? Why do we have to change? And that's when you have to really get into the spirit of explaining the why. And if you start with the why, this is why, it's going to be a lot easier for them to understand, because providers are very practical people at the same time, and they need facts and they need logic, and that's what they do. So when they have that, things are easier for them to absorb. If they don't have this, and I had to learn this the hard way, because before it was like, oh, well, if it's a new rule, I should just be able to tell them and they should just be able to go along with it and be like, okay, because we have such a good relationship, they should be willing to be like, okay with it. Clearly, I had to learn. Oh, little coder. So I had to learn after a while. It was like, why? Why? Because not because I said so, even though I was thinking it in my head, I was like, I just told you why. Why? The explanation of why. So for me to give the details of the why on anything, even if it was from the new updates with the E&M tool, or new CPT codes that came out, or new diagnosis codes that came out, more specificity on those codes, different rules about different procedure codes that required time. And so that's the thing that I had to remember, and anytime I had to explain this, all right? So that was the thing that I had to be like, okay. The other thing is, do tailor your approach. A lot of providers are very particular about how and when they're asking questions. A lot of times they will not ask you questions in front of their peers. So if you say, oh, do you have any questions? It's going to be like crickets in that room, or it's going to be crickets in the hallway wherever you're talking to them, because, oh no, I'm fine. But if you happen to be like passing by their office and they happen to be there, and there is a moment where you're like, okay, you know, this would be a good time to just poke my head in and say, hello, how's it going? Talk to them like you are wanting to, like you're wanting to not just always need something or want something. That's another thing too, because talking to them always when you only need something and not really taking the time to establish those relationships it can hurt you. And I learned that. I learned that one the hard way, because I did think for the longest time that they never wanted to hear from me. That why did they want to hear from me? What did I have to say to them? But it was all about, Blue, I'm not a coder, I don't understand. And that's where you come in. You're the coder, you understand. Explain it to me. Explain it to me in a way that I can understand. And so it's just like, okay, so it was about advancing my own communication skills, which is what I'm telling you guys. Advance your communication skills, because when people are really intelligent, they're different when it comes to communication. Because if you don't take the time to communicate with them properly, they're just going to dismiss you. And it's so easy for them to dismiss you, because already in their head, they're thinking, I'm a doctor. I don't need to listen to somebody who has a high school diploma or a GED and a certification. What do I need to listen to you for? When in actuality, if they stopped and got to know you, which is why you have to be the one to initiate, hey, how you doing? You don't have to make it a long, drawn-out thing. Pay attention to the things that they like. I learned that my boys love fast cars. Well, I have a fast car. And that was what they noticed about me. They saw me coming out of my car. And so they were like, hey, don't you drive that? And they told me some other car. I was like, no. I'm a Chevy girl. That's what I told them. I said, I'm a Chevy girl, so no. So I had to explain to them about the car and everything. That was how our relationships started. Having that one little thing. And for some people, it is football teams or basketball teams or whatever the case may be. It could be a particular school. In my office, I have a license plate for the University of Michigan, because I'm a huge University of Michigan fan. I have a license plate from when I went to Michigan to visit that says Go Blue on it. And immediately, there's a few Spartans, which is not Michigan State. There's a few of them running around in the department. And they're like, what's that? And so that wasn't a communication opener too. I'm like, it's the University of Michigan, like only the best. They're like, whoa, 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 whoa. But I really like the school and I like the license plate. That's why I got it. So, because it says Go Blue. Now that one, it says BLUE. Not like my name, but close enough. But anyway, but that was a start to my relationship with those providers. Now, it's not their fault that they like the Spartans. That's what I tell them all the time. It's not my fault you like the Spartans. And they're like, okay, Blue. But, it does have, we get that good dialogue because of that. And they know that I've had just those moments where we've taken the time to get to know each other, and it makes things a lot easier. So when I do query them, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to dismiss me, because they already have a established relationship with me, right? And it's going to be, okay, I can take her seriously. She's here to help me. And when they're in those meetings and they get their totals and their numbers and what are they generating on productivity and how are they performing in the hospital versus everybody else, that's when they really get happy. But they know, and they know how I am, and they know my work ethic too. And letting them know your work ethic by showing them. You don't have to tell them, oh, I code 100% of your encounters, or I did this, or I did that, or, not doing that, but showing. It's all about the why and showing. Being consistent with how you are. And it is really key. So that way they know that you're going to be somebody who's genuine. I had somebody today, actually, one of the PAs, that I had done a class, and this class was done 2 years ago. She emails me today. She's like, hi, Blue. I just wanted you to know that, I tell all of my other provider friends about you and the classes that you used to give. And I'm just curious that, how are you doing? And I wanted to know if you have some of the slide decks that you had. So I forwarded on the slide decks that I had done with the classes that I had done with her. And so I was updating her on some of the new things that had come out. And it's nice. It's nice to be remembered. It's nice that somebody that I trained, helped to train, reached out to me and then remembered all the good things. So being consistent and being available and having that good approach is going to be the key to a lot of things. And don'ts. Let's talk about the don'ts, because I'm getting close on time already. Don't ever tell a provider you don't know. If they ask you a question, I will look into it. I'm going to do some research on that. Let me get back to you. You always leave the door open. You never, ever, ever tell them I don't know. I've seen coders do that. And it's just like, why would you do that? That's like slamming a door, because I've had providers come up to me and say, look, I don't want to talk to any other coders if you're going to tell me I don't know. And I go, I don't say that. What is your question? And so then they're like, well, and so they get to their question. Okay, easy enough. And if I don't know it, I'll get back to you on it. Really? Yeah. And I will get back to them, because obviously when you tell them something, you have to follow through. If you're going to get back to them, get back to them. Don't just ignore them. Don't forget, don't do those things. Be consistent with it. And so that way you have that good approach. Because at the end of the day, like I said, they're just as human as you and I, and they get their feelings hurt too, and they have a lot of pressure on them. So the fact that if you're going to be there to be a team player with them, they need to know this. I keep a candy basket, the bear trap. If you're unfamiliar, you're brand new to my channel, I have a bear trap. In my office, I leave candy in a basket, and I leave bottled water out. And this basket is rather famous in the region because my providers, I guess, had gone down to another facility, and they were talking about their coders and things like that, and the numbers and how things look, because my facility was showing that there was a market improvement. And they were like, well, how are you doing it? And they go, well, we have a really good coder. They go, yeah, she's always giving us candy. We have snacks, and, she talks to us. She sends us a coding tip of the week. She does all of these things, and it's just little bits of information that she can pass on to us. And they go, wait, you have snacks? Your coder brings snacks? They go, yeah, she just has a basket and has candy. And, and so they're like, our coders don't do that. How can we get that over here? And so they had asked one of the administrators, why does she do it? He goes, well, I'm gonna put it to you like this. He goes, I know the girl who does it, which is me. And what do you do when you're trying to hunt for bears, right? You put out the bear traps. You leave food out, and then the bears come around, right? And then you get to take your pictures or do whatever, right? And so he goes, it's the same idea. So animals in the wild, there are alpha animals like bears and lions and things like that. That's the same idea with providers. They're very alpha. So you leave food out and they'll come, right? And they'll be like, oh, okay. And so they stop and they visit. So he says that's what she does. It's a bear trap. And she visits with them, and they talk to her, and there's really good communication. And they start to tell her, what's going on, and they ask questions, because there's nobody else around to judge them for asking questions. So he goes, it's really kind of genius that she does that. And I actually didn't do that with that in mind. I did it more in mind because they get tired too. They get tired too, and it's just simple candy. I mean, it's not anything extravagant. It is literally just simple candy. And they just sit there and they breathe. And I've seen them just breathe. And when you have that kind of relationship and that kind of trust like that, and where they just start talking and they get relaxed, they have a bottle of water, it just makes things so much easier. And you get to embrace that part of the coding. And it's not just about the numbers, and it's not just about the codes, and it's not just about the procedures. It's about the whole process. And, that's what I have to say on that. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. But do that. Do make sure that you are trying to work on your skills. If you're shy, watch TED Talks, read books. I leave my books that are recommended in the description box below. So that way you guys can check those out and make yourself more well-rounded, and make yourself more available so that you can catch those details. because that's what it's all about. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys for joining me, and I will see y'all tomorrow for tomorrow's episode. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.